Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for downloading The Horse Show here on Wisp Sports. This is Season 4, Episode 24, and I'm Chris Stafford. You can join in the conversation on any of our podcasts by following us on Wisp Sports, and you can also contact us directly with any questions or suggestions at info@wispsports.com. We would love to hear from you. On the show today, I'm going to be joined by Molly Bailey, who is a senior reporter at the Chronicle of the Horse, and we are going to take a look back at 2019 to some of the highlights of the show season, both here and overseas. Molly, hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, what a year it's been, hasn't it?
It's been just incredible. 2019's been awesome.
It has, and it's meant to be that sort of quiet, in between years, in between World Equestrian Games and Olympic Games. But because we have the Pan Ams, which is very important on our side of the pond, and all of the European Championships, it still fills the calendar, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's been a very busy year, despite the fact that we haven't had a major championship aside from the Europeans and the Pan Ams.
So which of those events have you been covering for the Chronicle of the Horse this year? Where have you been on your travels?
I've been lucky enough to get to go to the Pan Ams this year. I got to go to Lima, Peru, which was just an incredible trip, and we saw some fantastic sport down there. In dressage, we saw the Canadians won with 4 women, with Jill Irving, Tina Irwin, Lindsay Kellogg, and Naima Moreira La Liberté, won team gold, and U.S. was right behind them with silver with 3 women. So it was really a fantastic year for women down there in dressage.
It certainly was, wasn't it? And of course, the Pan Ams, certainly for the US and I think for the other nations too, it's an opportunity to, because it's that lower level, next level down from World Equestrian Games, to give new riders a chance. And you see some rookies on making their championship debut, and that certainly was the case on the US team, wasn't it? We had Sarah Lockman, who won the individual gold on First Apple, and Jennifer Baumann. I know Jennifer's been on the team before. I think she's been on a Nations Cup team, but this was her championship debut with Handsome, wasn't it?
Right, absolutely. You're exactly right. And Sarah was gold and individual gold, and Jennifer Baumert was individual bronze. And both of them were just absolute stars, and so excited to be on the team and to put in really, really special performances.
What was your major impressions then because it's always an important qualifier for those that haven't qualified for an Olympic game. So just focusing on the dressage now, Molly, what was your biggest takeaways from what you saw there this year?
Well, I think Sarah Lockman and First Apple that was really a breakout performance for them. Of course, she's not new to the sport or anything like that, but she had a wonderful sponsor, Jerry Ibanez, who actually just passed away, but partnered with her with First Apple, and was really an extraordinary performance. I was blown away, and I think that everybody who was down there was as well.
And look at some of the others, of course, because Canada was right there, obviously winning the gold. Tina Irwin took the silver medal individually with Laurencio. Talk a little bit about all those other performances, because I know we tend to focus, and we're so concerned, about getting qualified for an Olympic Games, but there are other performances that are noteworthy in that non-Olympic year. So who turned your head?
I think Tina Irwin was absolutely fantastic, and she was right there. She almost got gold, actually, individual gold. But the whole Canadian squad was really pretty spectacular. Canada had to qualify for the games, and so they had to send a team that was partly Grand Prix and partly small tour, whereas the U.S. was already qualified. So the U.S. sent to small tour teams because the United States didn't need to qualify, and so we didn't need to send a mixed team. But the Canadians were really spectacular. Laurencio is a really special horse with Tina Irwin. Lindsay Kellogg's horse is amazing. And Naima, who did the Grand Prix, was really spectacular as well.
And then, of course, eventing, we clinched the gold as we needed to in eventing.
What a relief.
what a relief, I think, for everyone. And Lynn Szymanski rode her RF Cool Play there into silver medal position. So a good result for her. But talk a little bit about the eventing competition. You know, what the course was like, what the competition was like for you. And obviously, this is a different standard in South America. We have to put it in perspective. But what were your impressions?
We absolutely do. So the Pan Am Games are actually a 3-star, so it's the old 2-star. So it's not at the same level as the Olympics or the World Games, but my goodness, was that a tough 3-star course. And everybody was just blown away by how tough the course was. Boyd Martin, who was individual gold, said, "I'm so glad that I brought my fanciest 5-star horse to get around, because I'm not sure I could have done it on anybody else." And Lynn Szymanski was incredible with Cool Play. This is actually her 3rd Pan Am Games, and she actually has all 3 of her Pan Am horses at home in a field. Isn't that incredible to have 3 Pan Am horses in one place?
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's worth a photograph. I think I have to go and get a photograph of that at some point.
I think so too.
That's wonderful. And what other impressions then of that? Because as you say, it was important for the US to win gold because we needed that qualification for Tokyo next year. But what were your other big takeaways from the Pan Am's eventing?
You know, it was very tough. And like you said, it's a little bit of a different standard because it is in South America, where the sport isn't quite as developed as it is in Europe and in the United States. But we saw some good performances. We saw people get around who maybe you weren't expecting to get around. There was a young man from Honduras who he and his mother was there competing in the dressage. He was there competing in eventing, and he got around and did a beautiful job. So I think that just because it's not in the United States or Europe, you can't completely discount the competition.
No, for sure. Well, and it's also always a an indicator for Tokyo too, for those who are sending their A game to give us an idea of form, and the same in jumping too. At least the US came away with the bronze medal with Beezy Madden, who just keeps on pulling it out of the bag, doesn't she, on the big events?
She's incredible. And she, once again, has had a very consistent year. She was 3rd in the Pan Ams on Breitling, and she had to jump off for that medal. I think it was a 3 or a 4-way jump off, and she won it, of course, being Beezy. But she's just had an incredible year. Not just was she 3rd at the Pan Ams, but she was 5th at the World Cup final. Also with Breitling, with Derry Lou, who's another one of her top horses. She won the big Grand Prix at Spruce Meadows, the $3 million CP International Grand Prix. She won $1 million class out at Coachella. I mean, she's just on fire, but she always is, so it's easy to discount her.
It is incredible consistency over such a long period of time, decades now. Don't want to age you too much, Busy, but it really is wonderful to have that kind of consistency. And speaking of consistency, we're going to be talking about Piggy French in a minute because because she has certainly shown a consistency this year in eventing. But going from the Pan Ams, of course, as I said, the second really, or equally on the other side of the pond, were the European Championships in 3 Olympic disciplines, eventing, dressage, and show jumping. And Ingrid Klimker, I have to give a big shout out of her. She did win the FEI Athlete of the Year award so deservedly because she won back-to-back European Championships. I know this was really important to her, Molly, because when she won last year, she'd been on team, she'd won lots of team medals over the years, but to her, the individual title was really, really important last year, where she came back and she did it again on the same horse, Hail Bob. Incredible partnership they have now. So she's one of only 2 riders, actually, who've been able to do that, and that the other one is Pippa Funnell, of course, who went on to win Burley this year on MGH Grafton Street. But I think before we talk about Piggy's achievements, we really should dwell on Ingrid because she really is a rock star. She really is. She's been so consistent over the years, just consistently bringing up young horses.
Absolutely. She's really inspiring. And here you have someone who I think she's 51, and she's just been consistent and keeps going and going. When she won the Athlete of the Year award from the FEI, she was the 3rd German woman in a row to win this honor. Last year, it was Simone Blum, who's the show jumper, of course, who was individual gold WAG.
World champion.
Exactly. And the year before that, it was Isabel Worth, who's another household name. So she talked about what an incredible honor it was to be the 3rd German woman in a row to win that honor.
Yeah, really fabulous. Well, big shout out to Ingrid. She's been on the show a few times, and such a likable person too. A mum, a wife, and a fantastic horsewoman. So next year is going to be interesting for the Olympic Games. We'll get to the previewing those soon enough. But I want to come back to Piggy French, because Piggy French, who won badminton earlier this year, she was second at Burley behind her mate Pippa Funnell there, and she was fourth in Kentucky. She won the team silver at the Europeans, of course. She was on yet another British team. But she has the most international wins, Molly, this year. 15 international wins. How about that for form?
That is absolutely incredible. I can't imagine anyone else getting near that.
No, and I think it just speaks to her hard work and determination. She was local to me in England, where I grew up. She's another Northamptonshire girl, and she's just one of those grafters, that she just is such a hard-working rider and keeps producing young horses. She's just got what it takes, and I think there's a number of those British riders, if we just talk about British riders who have that kind of longevity, like Piggy and like Pippa Funnell.
Absolutely. And Pippa has just had an amazing year as well. I mean, here she is winning Burley, 14 or 16 years after she won the Grand Slam?
Yes.
I mean, overcoming her own self-doubt and a couple injuries. I mean, she is so inspiring.
But that's another interesting point you make, overcoming her own self-doubt. You would think, with the successes that she's had on so many horses over such an extended period of time, that you wouldn't have a lot of self-doubt getting in the way, would you?
Right. But you talk to these riders and they're just normal people like you and I.
Mm-hmm. And they do have a crisis of confidence from time to time. But the other thing, which was really lovely to watch, and Burley, I have to admit, is my favorite event, was the reception she got for winning there. It was just a lovely, it always is a lovely event, but a lovely result. And she just loves the crowd there. It was so emotional, so heartfelt. It was one of those magic sporting moments.
Absolutely. It was just incredible. And again, to win this event a decade and a half after you won it last time was just amazing.
And we have to give a shout out to my old friend Di Lampard, who's been chef de keep for the British show jumping team now for a few years. And she and I used to ride with Caroline Bradley back in the day. So we have a very special connection, Di. She was on the show recently talking about the year that she's had. But at the Nations Cup final in Barcelona, Molly, she was the only female chef de keep.
That's something that I've noticed, and I've sort of wanted to look into that a little bit more, how many female chefs to keep that we have, which is, the number seems to be pretty low across sports. I've paid the most attention in show jumping, but Di obviously is a notable exception, and she's so wonderful at her job as well. She
is, but it's interesting when you see so many coaches, women coaches and chef de keeps in other sports, and yet in equestrian, which we are so proud of, is an equal gender sport, that there was only one there. I think it was 17 or 19 nations off the top of my head, and only one female. Now, if you look in other disciplines, we've got Anne Kaczynski, of course, who's been chef de keep, Di Langer over here.
Right.
The two women who have been chef de keep here for jumping teams, but we haven't seen it in eventing.
You're right.
Well, with Debbie McDonald, of course, we have for dressage. But before that, it was men.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Like you said, here we are, a sport where the genders are supposed to be equal, and we're not necessarily seeing that at the top across the board. But show jumping, we're so happy to have Diane Langer and Anne Krasinski, who are so talented and good at what they do.
Certainly are. Well, just to summarize the European Championships, of those three Olympic disciplines, it is a true indication of form, because we're not seeing, their B team going to these championships. It is their A team that are going and giving us an indication of form going into the end of the year and being in that pre-Olympic year. What were your takeaways from those performances? Are these winners going to be the riders we're going to see on the podium in Tokyo?
I think so, especially at the Europeans, more so than the Pan Ams. You really saw the teams sending the very best of the best. In show jumping, you had Martin Fuchs and Clooney, who won gold after being second everywhere, all in all again. And even though the teams that won were all male, I'll just say that for show jumping, I still think we saw some really strong performances across the board. And I think we're going to see the same types of teams put up next year for Tokyo.
And who would bet against Isabel Wirth, who took another European Championships with Belarus and had her teammate Dorothea Schneider there with the wonderful showtime in silver medal position. Women won the European Championships in Rotterdam. Of course, they were taking place at the same time as the jumping championships. So it was a busy time in Rotterdam. Those European Championships for eventing rules took place in Le Moulin, but going to the dressage, as I said, how would you bet against Isabel? And she's showing the same sort of form at World Cup qualifiers already.
She's been absolutely unbeatable. And it's incredible to think just how very dominating she is in the sport. When you look back at her record, I lost count of how many medals she has across all the championships.
And
but
so
it's
has
more
she.
than anyone else.
And so is she.
Exactly.
I think the last time I spoke to her, I said, have you any idea? She said, oh, no, they're all in a room. I have no idea how many medals I have.
I'd love to see that room.
Yes. Again, tremendous performance for her. Congratulations to Isabel. German women really dominating there in the jumping and the eventing and dressage at the European Championships. And as I said, who would bet against Isabel or Ingrid in Tokyo?
Right, exactly. They've got to be right up there on top.
They certainly will. I'm sure they'll be on their team. Not going to spook them now, but they'll be on their teams anyway. There'll be team medals involved. That's a pretty safe bet, I think. Let's move on to the World Cups, as I mentioned, because Isabel is, for one of those riders, has got so many horses at that level, and she's been winning World Cup qualifiers in Europe already before we head into the holiday season. But over here, we've seen some pretty impressive performances in the World Cup qualifiers in North America for jumping.
Absolutely. We've had some women who have been right up there on top. We had what I thought one of the most exciting performances was at Washington this year. That's always a wonderful horse show. It's a lot of fun to go to right in the middle of the city. And Laura Kraut won there with a new horse named Florette,
yes,
who is a really special horse that she brought over just for that class. And she went ahead and won it.
Talk about being focused.
Yeah, seriously.
That's wonderful. That bodes well, that partnership. She's excited about that mare, I know, as a partnership for next year.
Absolutely. Another partnership that I think looks really exciting is Adrian Sternlicht and Benny's Legacy. They won 2 World Cup qualifiers in a row, one in Las Vegas and one in Thermal.
I know.
It's just incredible.
That was incredible. We've had that conversation with Adrian just recently on the show here, and winning not only in a third competition with Benny's Legacy, because it's a new ride. She started showing him in September, went on to win Thermal, then went indoors to Vegas, and he'd never jumped indoors in Vegas, indoors period, much less in Vegas, but he's clearly let them know that he would like to come back to Vegas in April for the final.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that horse is ready. I think she's ready. I think it's really exciting.
And incidentally, she then went on with the mare Just a Gamble to Palm Beach and won a CSI 4-star just a week later. So talk about form. She deserves a holiday break, I think.
I think so too. She could take a couple weeks off and then come back.
And no, you've been watching the Global Champions Tour as well, because that's a big money league, that is.
It's amazing what they have going on. And here you can just turn on your computer and watch it streaming from Shanghai or who knows where. I think one of the standout performances we've seen this year is by Danny Goldstein. She now goes by Waldman, so Danny Waldman, with her wonderful mare, Lizzie Mary. They won 2 stops on the tour this year. They won in Berlin and they won in Shanghai. And she also won a big 5-star class down in Wellington. She's just been on fire this year. And on top of that, she got married. So I think Danny wins the year for the best year.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting the momentum that league has gained over the years. Jan Tops, of course, the Dutch show jumper, who way back now, I can't exactly remember when he started this Global Champions Tour. He was going against the grain, against the tide a little bit, being outside the FEI. But it's proved to be a very successful tour, rather like the Event Rider Masters Tour as well.
Absolutely. And it's really exciting. And I think it's got a lot of sponsors excited. It's got a lot of riders excited. And some people follow the tour and some people just do a class or two when they're in the neighborhood, so to speak. Like you see in Miami, you see a lot of US riders who just go to Miami. And you saw a lot of riders come to the brand new Global Champions Tour show that was in New York this year on Governor's Island, right in New York City.
Yeah, how about that? They do have, as you say, some fabulous venues for this, some wonderful backdrops. And they actually go into Horse Guards Parade in London. You know, I don't know how they get permission to go to the places that they do. And Shanghai, you mentioned, you know, some of the most fabulous venues in the world. I wouldn't mind being on that tour just for the venues.
Absolutely. Just to see some of these incredible places, it's really special.
Well, let's summarize 2019 then. In your view, as a senior reporter at the Chronicle of the Horse, Molly, you are in a unique position there to be watching so much all at the same time. What have you been your takeaways for this year?
You know, it's been a great year. We've seen a lot of really, really good sport and fewer issues at the horse shows than I would expect to see. We didn't see any scandals at the Europeans. We didn't see any scandals or problems at the Pan Ams, which is a nice change after the WEG last year, where we had some problems in the sports a little bit with dressage canceling the freestyle. So I think from a sporting perspective, it's been just absolutely fantastic. And like I said, I think the big winner this year is Danny Waldman with the 2 GCTs and the 5-star win in Wellington. And again, BZ's had just such a consistent year. She also won a World Cup qualifier as well. We'll expect to see her in Las Vegas this year in 2020.
Absolutely. Well, I think I have to come back to Ingrid winning back-to-back there, as you say, now in her early 50s, and Piggy French, 15 international wins. You know,
unbelievable.
Absolutely wonderful. So, yeah, lots of standout performances, but congratulations to each and every one of them. It really is exciting looking at the future for equestrian sport around the world, and not least of all with the upcoming Tokyo Olympic Games. Will you be there?
You know, I don't get to go to Tokyo. One of the senior editors here, Lisa Slade, will be there for the Chronicle.
Okay, well, we can expect extensive coverage, as always, on the Chronicle of the Horse. So we should mention that you have your own podcast now, which is very exciting. You've had a couple of episodes out, so you'll be monthly in 2020. You're going to really go all gangbusters now for 2020. I'm sure you will not be short of content. So what can we look forward to, Molly?
Well, you know, a lot of the folks that we're planning on speaking with in 2020, it's secret, can't let you know who it is yet.
Darn, I thought we could get a sneak preview.
But a lot of the folks that we'll be speaking with will tie right in with articles in the magazine. So Chronicle fans and Chronicle subscribers will be happy to get to a more in-depth look at some of the folks that they already know.
Wonderful. Remind everybody where they can find you online and with the podcast.
You can find our website, which has the podcast right on there, at www.coth.com.
Fantastic. Molly, lovely to talk to you as always. And it's been fun just to go back and look in the rearview mirror at this year's major performances here in equestrian sport.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays from Wisp Sports.
And that's it for this week's show. Of course, you can join in the conversation at any time at wispsports.com and on social media at Wisp Sports. We'll be back in the new year with a lot to look forward to here on The Horse Show as we lead up to Tokyo 2020. Until then, thanks again to my guest, Molly Bailey. A very, very happy new year to you. Goodbye for now.